Hello, and welcome to American Amnesia. I am your host, Cliff Garner, and this program is found on Clisario 2 on YouTube, and Clisario 2 also on, it'll be coming up on Gab and also on Minds.com as soon as I figure out how to use those. Also on Cliff Garner on Facebook, and also on Facebook at the American Amnesia slot on there. It's an affiliated page. And I post also on a few other pages, but I have been a member of, and still am a member of the Light Flint radio program, although we haven't broadcast anything for a while. Do plan to do some soon, hoping to hear back from GK soon. Hopefully he's doing well. Hope you're well, my friend. And I'd like to get into some things on there. I am planning on going into the ministry in a more academic way, I suppose. I'm going to be taking courses in apologetics and theology. So, Reverend Cliff. So there you go. So that's kind of where I'm at. I had a really bad bout with health, and I've had other issues. I've been really busy with all kinds of stuff. I was busy with work for a little while there, and I'll probably be busy with school, but I do plan to step up things and put things up with a greater regularity. Maybe, I don't know about daily, but at least a couple times a week I do plan to do. And of course, I'm not a news person. I'm discussing bigger ideas, metapolitics, and things of that sort, and I don't intend to change that. I envy a guy like Styx Hexenhammer, who talks every day, and he's very glib. He reminds me of me when I was younger, and that's kind of the way I was. And I was a real smart aleck, which is part of why I love him so. He's got that rapier wit, and I do too. But I've mellowed out over the years. And so that comes with, I suppose, I don't know about so much age as it is a process of maybe coming to terms with the reality around you, no matter what you think of it. You know, I'm still just as passionately opposed to what I was opposed to all along, but that doesn't change, and the burning in my belly is no different, but the way I respond is a lot different, and the way I do it on a daily basis is a lot different. I've digested a lot of this silliness, and even the anger and stuff. I was a very angry young man, and I do intend to do a real thorough my walk away, which really happened through the 80s, but I think it kind of came to a head in 88. Never did like Reagan all that much while he was in office, but I have a lot more regard for him in retrospect. And not only that, I figured all through, even though I didn't agree with a lot of things he said, that anybody that scares the hell out of your enemies is actually pretty good in my book. I didn't feel that way at first, but I came to that conclusion in the early 80s. But I was definitely a radical. I fell off the spectrum somewhere in, I don't know, 83, I guess. I started questioning the solemnities and the verities of socialism, probably 83, 82, 83. And one of the main things is that when you, especially if you're an anarchist like I was, here you are, you're anti-state, anti-statist, and then you find yourself agreeing to all these statist ideas because they socialist, right? And they're supposed to be good for the poor people, right? And you see how it's wasted. They put all this money in a centralized place and they squander it, often stealing it. Look at Social Security for a great example. But we see this ignorance of what socialism is, what it's about, everything else, and it doesn't help that most of the people who call themselves socialists are so utterly clueless, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I mean, the woman's an idiot. She's an idiot. She went to Boston College, but I don't see how or why. What a good school to bend over so far for somebody, probably for ethnic reasons. I hate to say that, but I think that she benefited on that, and that she didn't really get any good out of it. The woman doesn't have the capacity. She has no intellectual capacity. The woman's an idiot. Sorry. She is a stupid person. We get another one like Kamala Harris. Everybody was raving about her. I had students that were raving about her. And, when she was getting elected, I was kind of enthusiastic. It's like, okay. She irritated certain people in the establishment. I'm cool with that. And she gets there and she's an idiot. I'm sorry, she's a dingbat. Maxine Waters is a dingbat. These people are stupid. It amazes me. And then, I hear people talk about Obama being this great socialist. I don't really see it. Obama, as far as I'm concerned, is more of a fascist. He's into that meeting of the corporate world and the bankers with the government. This private-public thing where they all kind of stick money in each other's pockets. No, he's a fascist. And by the way, that's what that's about. Didn't you know? Don't you read the corporate state? The corporate state. Of course, that's not too different from state corporation, but you socialists need to really read. Some of you are pretty smart. I know that. I'm fully aware of that. But there's so many of you that are so idiotic, and you have no clue of what you're even talking about. And social democracy and democratic socialism are two different things. They are two different things. And when you look at the EU, actually, what you have is kind of a fascist wedding of corporatism onto the state, centralized state, but you don't have the democratic socialism in which the means of production are in the hands of the government. See, that's where the difference is. Bet you didn't know that. But that's where the difference is. Socialism is not a generator of wealth. I'll repeat that. It is not a generator of wealth. You have to generate wealth in other ways. Now, what the bankers do, it comes basically with printing more money. And, of course, the loans and everything else. And then you've got the hedge funds and all this kind of thing. And they're mean. And and it's also from generated debt. See, that's what they do, is they generate debt, and they use that debt to buy things. And that's what you have when you have these central economies, with the Fed and all this stuff. And that's where they create the money that they print. And it's also inflation. I mean, it tends to eat up a lot of people's wealth. I mean, when you get to the richest people, they got enough money, and, no big deal. So it's a kind of what do we call it? Predatory. I really don't think of it as predatory so much. It's more parasitic. Parasitic relationship between them and the body politic. And that's why you see so many of these companies that have left America and have gone elsewhere. And they were being encouraged to do so by this globalist elite who was they were planning to take over the world using America as their leverage. And they pretty much did it, actually. They pretty much succeeded. The thing is that what Trump's doing is overturning a lot of what they were doing and letting people have back, a lot of their state integrity, I suppose. This is what they were trying to do, is they were trying to just kind of sit on top and manipulate everybody from there using basically American wealth, but they didn't care about America. And these people, their loyalties are to themselves and to other people in their, as it were, class. Trump isn't exactly in their class. I mean, he is and he isn't. Part of his problem, Trump's problem, as far as they're concerned, is he actually produces something real. He actually builds things, and that tends to get looked down upon by the bankers who see their clean hands and their clean nails as being a virtue. Quite frankly, I prefer the dirt and the gritty, I suppose, reality of construction. My father was in road construction. I did it for a while. I worked in factories. I see, I didn't have that alienation of factory. I would see the product going out, and I understood what my part in production was within that process, because I knew the parts that I was doing was being used in the products that we were finishing, and I worked in various stages of it, including in shipping and receiving. So I saw it, built from scratch and then go. I do understand that a person's labor makes something, and I saw that. I understand it. Marx's alienation wasn't for that. My alienation was that the average person was being pushed out of the political process, and that they were not being allowed to meaningfully affect their future or their fate or their lives. It was pretty much the top-down arrangement, and I've always, and I do mean always, I've always been in favor of a bottom-up approach. I don't see centralization as a virtuous way of going about it. I think it's a terrible way. And even when I was a socialist, I was looking at that, and it was one of these contradictions that I had a hard time with, and eventually I just gave up on it. And when I did, the repercussions in my thinking, in my processes of thinking, those repercussions were tremendous, and they rerouted my thinking in a complete way. I revolutionized my thought more than once, and I've had to do that, to reassess it and kind of make sure it's going in the right direction. And for a time, I was rather agreeable to what we call the neocons and the neolibs too. I mean, I could see their perspective, and I eventually rejected it. And I rejected it largely because of when I was traveling abroad, I was seeing the results of what went on with the Iraq War and things like that. So I'll talk about these things in the future. I'll actually do my walk away and really walk away from really everything at one time or another, and to come to where I'm at right now. And I'm a little loath to criticize Trump because of all the criticism he's been getting from the press. It's like I don't need to add my 2 cents worth. As a matter of fact, if anything, I feel like I need to defend him and to attack their abuse, which is, in my opinion, far worse. So, I'm in a different boat than a lot of people that I respect and love to watch, and Styx and H.A. Goodman. Goodman's fabulous, and quite a few others that I do have some different viewpoints from them because I see it from the perspective I've seen it from. I was very active, pretty much in the wake of the 2000 election, towards trying to find I suppose, a populist approach. And as far as I was concerned, the Republicans had a better start on it. I used to argue with people at the college and other places, about this, that they were like, well, no, what do you think of the Democrats? It's like, how so? How so? How are they going to return anything to the average person if they're going to alienate the average person to make sure that they don't ever approach that prosperity? When you have this graduated income tax, you're making sure that you enforce a class system, a pretty rigid one at that. You make it more difficult to get out and to build up the wealth that it takes to move up. And who runs the show? Well, it's those people on the top that are complaining about the people on the top. My, how the hypocrisy just repeats itself. It reduplicates, right? It duplicates, and it almost has no end to it. And that we were seeing that this shredding of the fake spectrum that was promoted because of the dichotomy, right, of the neocons to the neolibs, and drawing their false center somewhere else, because they really wasn't looking at the difference between the two of them. And they tried to imagine this gulf, but there was no difference between the two. Not really. No, it wasn't significant. And they were trying to project this gulf between left and right, and that this trough in the center was the reality, and it was not. The only thing that's the reality in that term is that to the extent that people have bought the rhetoric of the left or the right and have been unable to get past the rhetoric on either side to come to that point in the middle where they agree. This is going to change, because what you have is that in a very beautiful way, the neocons and the neolibs are now Democrats. Isn't that interesting? And nobody wants to talk about how Bill Kristol is now a Democrat. Why do the Bushes promote the Democrats? Gee. And there's a new spectrum that's emerging from this elimination of the false dichotomy. It's not even a spectrum. It's more of I would dare say a panoply, an array of different ideas that emerge now, because they're no longer being covered over by this false paradigm, really, that has been projected upon us ever since. Really, it's been done since pretty much the end of World War II, and the machinations that Nixon was pulling behind the scenes as a vice president, and Kennedy tried to stop and died in the process, and Johnson perpetuated. And of course Nixon did too, and Carter did too. Carter tried to smooth over the 60s, right? Everybody's, we're coming back together, we're coming back to agreement, right? That was the whole idea, or at least that's what they said it was. It was a great sellout, and they told us young radicals to get in line. But what they were doing was that they were pulling everybody in to this false dichotomy that was becoming more and more prevalent. And they might have hated Nixon, but they were surely loving the internationalism that he promoted. And what happened is that these young radicals that infiltrated both parties, and to some extent, it wasn't even an infiltration. They were just, they were getting married and they were having kids, and they didn't want to rebel anymore. They wanted to build. But their ideas, they glommed on to the the neocons and neolibs are both ex-Trotskyites. I mean, that's where the core philosophy came from, was Trotsky, and that they were bringing this in from the cold. This is what was the new paradigm, and it defied Russia, sure, but also defied the West, and it was a perpetual revolution from inside. The revolution of the bureaucracy. I never thought about that until my uncle started talking about that. Oh goodness, probably 77, 78, when I first heard him talking about it. And I didn't think about it back then, but because I thought a revolution, you had to get out in the streets and start burning stuff. No. And I didn't really think of the Nazis as being a revolution. Now I've come to that conclusion that they were. And that they were definitely a revolution. Not only that, they were connected to the old Comintern. They were kicked out, but they're connected. So a lot of people really get irritated about that. They don't want to acknowledge this. They want to perpetuate this left-right line, basically, a two-directional line, and try to justify at the extremes some kind of anarchism. Now, how's that work? You go from communism to anarchism? Only in Marx. Only in Marx's dogma. That's the only place you're going to get that. It doesn't happen. It's not realistic. Hello? No. No, the fact is that what you have is actually two different approaches to a type of status and a non-status one. And there's non-status ideas in the center too. Center left, center right. Libertarianism is exactly that. So, and then you got ANCAPs and everything else. But we won't even have to go there. The fact is that what they have projected onto us to kind of hoodwink us has been a false paradigm. It just doesn't align. It is not aligned. And, the reinterpretations of it have been here, there, and everywhere. And then, they all argue, well, communism's left and fascism's left, but right is what, I mean, that doesn't work either. There's some other process at work here, and I'd say it's not even serrated along a line or a box or anything of the sort. Maybe more of like a globe, and different perspectives on the globe would be a more accurate way of looking at it. I've seen some models that are closer, and they use maybe a 5 field or even more field universe, I suppose, that depicts points along certain areas in which there's a blending, perhaps, of left and right. I mean, people in the center are sometimes very conservative about one thing, liberal about another. So, I mean, it just tells you this whole line left, line right just doesn't work. It isn't a reasonable construction or a reasonable model of political thought and expression. It's not. It is inadequate. So that needs to be redone. And that's sad. I think that as we start to examine and to look at the various expressions and how they interact, I suppose would be the word, with other ideas and other people, I think we're going to see a very great change in political thought. And it's going to be more of going back to the things that I've always said, the questions of who rules, to what extent, and for what rationale. Why? Who, what, why? Where? Well, it depends on what country you're talking about. When is a time issue. But those other questions are very pertinent in political thought and thinking. And the developments that they take might give a historical basis, but we do need to see how they work in real life and real world situations. And that I think is going to be the key. Any political philosophy that does not apply itself to reality is just an exercise in mental masturbation. And I don't apologize for being so blunt. That's really what it is. Politics should not be just an argument. It should be a means and or a solution. Preferably both. It should definitely be a means towards it, or it should be the solution itself. So we do need to re-examine it. And that was part of what really irritated me about the left all along once I started moving away from it, is that what you had was not really actual. They didn't applaud real, tangible results. They loved the symbolic victories where they'd pat themselves on the back. Where they actually got tangible results, had they actually claimed them, they would have made themselves obsolete. This is the problem. And it really hinged from the fact that in the 60s that the revolutionary ideas had overrun all the institutions. They had actually won. The revolution actually would have won, but they backed it up. And what had happened is that the children of the rulers decided that they needed to be the new rulers. They were anxious to replace their parents, but they weren't anxious to let everybody else in on the game. What they wanted to do was they wanted to remake all other parts of society in their image. That's why you had to have black elites and you have Hispanic elites, really not so much as Hispanically. They've been left in the dust. And that's a shame. Because now blacks are kind of a second-rate, actually third-rate ethnic bloc because of the illegal trafficking in people and immigration without, illegal immigration and without any curbing it. And this has not worked out very well for Hispanics, who are actually a very diverse group of people. And each one of those ethnicities within it have different interests and different political leanings, too. And also different ideas of what it means to be an American. They've misjudged people. And they misjudge people in a terrible way with this identity politics. And it's coming back to bite them on the butt. And I say, good. It should. Matter of fact, I hope it takes a whole hunk out of their butt. And that they can't sit down for a while. They need to fix their stuff. Big time. There was a reason why Abbie Hoffman committed suicide. Really is. And it was because of the condition of the left, even back at the time that when he did it. I think that he was very, very disappointed in where it was going. So, these are considerations that I kind of mull over and think over almost daily. And like I say, I do plan to do and actually do an organized exposition of my walk away moment. But I look at these larger issues, and I've always looked at them, and I keep coming back to certain books, Diane Ziegler's The Irony of Democracy, with the elites. And this is where the deep state actually is. I mean, what the deep state is, who it is, how it is manifest in the U.S. You can actually kind of see how it works internationally, and you can see where these international connections between deep staters from one country to the next have cooperated. And you can see it very clearly. It's not hard to find. I saw a lot of it when I was in Turkey, and that's where I first heard the term deep state. Erdogan was specifically fighting against entrenched judges, entrenched lawyers and attorneys, the different checks and balances, of course, within the Republic that kept him from doing what he wanted. And also with the military and the police and the what they call the MIT, which is kind of a combination of our FBI and CIA together, and the Gendarmerie, which is a particular police regimentation, I suppose, that is not the same as the local polices or the state polices or even the national. So you had all these different groups that he was fighting up against, and one by one he bent them all to his will. So that's what you're going to have when you see the FBI pretty much in open rebellion against Donald Trump. What's going to happen is that those people are going to be removed, and that the FBI is going to become more and more his. That will happen. And when it does, sorry, snowflakes, but you're going to cry, and you're not going to like the result. Well, too bad. You've been cheering it, and it's shame on you. Shame on you that you would actually undermine our republic in that way. And you don't even realize that the global people that are behind, that actually really not there's no shadow here. They were openly for Hillary Clinton. The neocons and the neolibs. The very forces I'm talking about. And they tried to co-opt Trump, and it didn't work. He rejected that. And good for him. Because at least he might not be as much of a reformer as I'd like to see. I'd like to see sweeping reform. I'd like to see him clean them all out. Matter of fact, really render the bureaucracy much smaller, for one thing. It needs to be lean and mean. It does. This bloat is just not good. But that's the way I see it. I think that it needs to be trimmed off. Trim the fat. It's about time. Get rid of the corruption out of D.C. We've had too much of it, and corruption encroaches on our freedom, and that should not be. And shame on you, snowflakes. You're for this. You're for the corruption? Are you out of your mind? Look at Illinois. Look at it. And it's fallen apart. Same with California, same with New York. These policies don't work. Time to change. Don't keep doing the same stupid thing and expect a different result. That's why you have to give up on socialism sooner or later. There are social varieties that do work. Fine. I don't have a problem with that. And that's part of why I don't have as much of a problem with Bernie Sanders as a lot of people want to think. But there's also a big problem when you're pulling it all in the middle and you're expecting men to act like angels. Men and women, I will say. Because both of them will steal. And they'll bring their piggy friends up to snort and eat up all the pork there. No. Stop it. We've had enough of that kind of crap. Let's improve things. Let's actually make this a better world than it was. We can leave it in better shape when we're gone. And then the next generation will have to fend for themselves. But this is wrong. I didn't do what I was going to plan on. I was planning on doing, actually. I had a article on Turkey, Libya, and slave markets in Libya, things like that. Erdogan and his nonsense. I'll do that next time. But it's good to get out and look at this, the big picture from time to time. This is the big picture. We're looking at a global corruption that emanated primarily from America, but it was basically the West and certain people within the West. And they made deals with people around the world, especially China. Lots of money there. And they were trying to pull the whole world down the shit tube. Excuse my French. And I'm glad it stopped. We dodged a big bullet. Now it's time to change the world. And you only change the world when you start by changing yourself. I've been doing that. You should too. So, with that in mind, keep the faith. Maintain change. Now look at yourself. Be the change you want to be. Till next time.